Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of Exit Philosophy with Griff and Mal. Mal Romanin joining me on as in the week of Remembrance Day. And Mal, do you have anybody in your family who served? I mean, we're wearing the poppies, and people need to remember and how personal it can be for a lot of people.
I think probably everybody probably has some family connection, right? My grandmother's brother served and unfortunately passed away in the process. And that's where I got my middle name from. My middle name is Hamilton. So he was Hamilton Young, I called him Hammy. I will say I do wish I know more about it or knew more about it, and I think I need to dive in a little deeper to learn the story a bit more. You lose it as time goes on, but yeah, I think about that, and I think it's important, obviously, to honor everyone's memory, including, your personal connections. But it's an important time to reflect for sure. Absolutely. You?
Yeah, my uncle Patrick Devine, who was my mom's older brother by a couple of years. He died in 1944 at the end of the European conflict. And he was in a tank. He was serving on a tank, and he was headed back to headquarters because they had heard the war was almost over. It was going to be in the next couple of days. And they ran over a mine, and the tank blew up. And as you know, my son is named Patrick.
Yes.
Um, there's also my grandson's middle name is Patrick. There's all sorts of Patricks on the divine side, and that name is going to live forever. But it all stems back to the war hero in our family, Pat Devine. So, yeah, there's a lot of personal memories on this week for this week. But one that I'm not, and I don't want to bore you too much, but it was 1992, and Felipe Alou had on the Friday just been named full-time manager. He had been a great second half manager after Tom Reynolds was fired in Montreal.
Right. Right.
And so I was told as PR guy that we were going to announce in the next week that Felipe was full-time. And he was the first Dominican-born manager in Major League history. So I wanted to make it a big deal. I wanted to
Of
do
course.
a video press conference with the Caribbean, with the Dominican, Venezuela,
Which
Colombia.
probably was a bit unprecedented back
It was
then too.
unprecedented at the time. So I needed to get 2 hours of satellite time that covered that cast a footprint, is what they called it, over the entire Caribbean region. So
Right.
I called the Mexican government, their national broadcast entity, and they said, "Oh yeah, we got 2 hours for you, $5,000." I went, "No, no, no, no. I I know satellite time at 5,000. You're trying to gouge the gringo, you know?"
That's right. Good,
So
good, probably work half is very,
I was in
not
touch
this
all the
time.
time. I was in touch all the time with Moises Alou, Felipe's son, who was a good friend of mine. And
Right.
no, no. He says, I know a woman who runs the Dominican broadcast. I said, of course you do, Moises.
That's right. How
And
convenient is this?
so we got the 2 hours set up, but the only time we could do it was Wednesday. And so the
Right.
next Wednesday. So I set up the press conference on the Wednesday um, in the private dining club behind home plate at Olympic Stadium, and invited all the local, and then had it all simulcast to the Caribbean, Dominican especially. And we show up, and the time's getting close. I'd sent out the invitation the night before, and then nobody showed up. And then so we did the Caribbean portion, and it went well. It was the first time, as you said, unprecedented. Then I realized that it was November 11th at 11 a.m. was the scheduled time that I
Are
had
you
made for the
serious? At
press conference
11 a.m.?
at 11 a.m. And so I have never, lest we forget,
Lest we forget.
I have never forgotten since.
No, no. I'm surprised you survived it.
Oh
Never
my God. Anyway,
Good thing you did do the Dominican thing. You'd have nobody at the press
yeah,
conference.
Felipe thought it was just about him and the Caribbean.
I'll
When
tell you, that is one of the biggest fears for a PR guy. I can remember doing, of course, you're bringing in, you've got the executives there, regardless, even conference calls. When I would have the GM on the line, whether it be JP or Alex or what have you, right? And you send out all your invites, and then you have this moment of panic where you're like,
Yeah.
did it go? Did everybody get it? Is any? I would start calling different outlets just to make sure somebody was going to show. Because the last thing I want to do was put Alex on the call and it's crickets. You know what I mean? Like, what
Yeah.
did I do wrong or something like that, where I didn't realize the timing, something else is going on. It is the biggest fear. I didn't live, I didn't plan anything at 11 a.m. on November 11th, fortunately. I was just a little smarter than
It
that,
was
maybe.
even more angst when it was during the fax era, when faxing was the thing.
Right. Because you don't
Uh,
know it all.
I gave a winter meetings talk, and it was the winter meetings PR meetings, and my topic was the miracle of the fax machine. That's how long ago it was.
That was your.
That was my topic. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'd like to see
I
that
say
presentation.
you can set it to either 4 minutes or 6 minutes. And if you're the same length as the other, then you get a whole sheet of paper in 4 minutes. Life
Oh,
has
the
changed.
technology. Yeah. How the world has changed in the PR landscape, right? Over the
But one
years.
one thing that hasn't changed is that every November, right after the World Series, the GM meetings happen. And they're not the winter meetings, they're the GM meetings. And we've both been around in PR for those meetings. They've grown in significance, but can you talk about when you were in
Sure.
PR and what the GM meetings meant?
Well, maybe the meetings haven't changed, but they've changed drastically in how they're covered. Um, as you know, back in the day, Griff, they were literally private GM meetings. Those were only for the GMs, and they were done, because the winter meetings was the big get together and deals get done and all that stuff. And then slowly people started covering the meeting. So towards the end of my tenure, they started to become a media event. And we didn't traditionally go because there just wasn't enough media attention to worry about it. But that's not the case now. Now you've got two separate events that are fully covered by media. And excellent. The more attention you can get on the game, the better it is. Now, what happens there? I don't think anything's changed. I think, they still get together to discuss mostly, with procedural stuff. And obviously, this is where you get the beginnings of free agency and trades get set up because anytime you're in rooms with other GMs, you're having productive conversations that lead to stuff down the road. It doesn't get done here generally, um, but they've changed drastically, and I'm sure you know you could tell people more than I could what it was like back in when they were just meetings and towards your tenure with the Jays, where they were a media event more than I
Yeah.
was there. Correct?
When I was at the Star for all the years I was at the Star, we didn't pay any attention to the GM meetings, and it was all winter meetings
Right.
because the season had just ended, and I would have traveled most of the season with the Jays, and then done the majority of the playoffs, including the entire World Series. So, if you're going to take a week or two off at the end of the season, it would be during the GM meetings, and you would pay attention because, as you said, there's a lot of preliminary discussions going on. But all of a sudden, when I joined the PR department with the Jays in 2019, it had already become a big event. And there was a media room. It was like herding the sheep, The media room was near the front of the resort hotel.
Yeah.
Everybody would gather there, and then they'd break off looking for their GMs or executives or managers. But still no news was happening. But 2019, and so that's the only one I went to in 4 years, because I realized that there wasn't a lot going on. Major League Baseball has their own media group to handle the entire GM, 20, 30 people. But the 2019 meetings were, in fact, the ones where the Athletic had the story on the cheating Houston Astros from 2017, and that dominated. Well, that and Scott Boris's annual appearance dominated the the meetings. But you're right. I mean, it's great to keep baseball in the news, but there's really no news happening there. It's setting it up for the winter meetings, and even now the winter
Well,
meetings have diminished in terms of a newsworthy event.
Well, and to be honest with you, the winter meetings are purely, in my view, a celebration of the game. It's where everybody comes together. It's no longer where deals get done. Back, I mean, technology, hey, things are happening all the time with these things. Back then, you had to convene, and that's when deals were made. Now, it's just more of, hey, we're together. We do this more to promote the game rather than encourage deals to get made. Because and now, like I said, when GMs get together, obviously it sparks things. You talk more, you set things up for future deals, and sometimes stuff does happen at the meetings. But back in the day, they happened at the meetings. Like that had to happen because you were there, and that was the point. Now it's just a big PR, promotional thing for the game, which is fantastic still. But they're an entirely different, tone to the meetings, and it's the industry comes together and it's front page everywhere, and I think that's as it should be. It's a great tool to promote the game.
Yeah,
And let's look at the NFL. Look at what the NFL draft has become. It is a massive event unto itself. It's
yeah,
it's it's just there to promote the NFL and football. I mean, you go there as a fan now. It's bizarre, but that's
yeah.
what it's smart. It's smart. It's what you've got
The,
to do to stay in the news, right?
there's a big difference between the NFL draft and the MLB draft, and MLB has tried to set it up the
They
same way.
have.
But the only thing is that most football fans have seen these kids playing on TV that are being drafted, seen them play in college, have an opinion on who should go where and which quarterbacks are the best, which wide receivers can help your team. But in baseball, there's a lot of new faces that nobody's ever seen. They're high school kids that have promised that they're going to go to a university using that as a negotiating tool. And it's the first time that a lot of fans see these players and know who they are. And
Well,
that's, I mean, it'll never match what the NFL does. The NFL is a master at it.
and I think probably the biggest reason is the NFL players are playing right away next year. They have to play. There's no minor league system. Like it's hard to get attached to even a second round pick in MLB when he's going to the complex and then heading to low
Yeah.
A ball. And then, 5 years later, those are the diehards. So it's hard. Now, what I think they need to do, and I think it is coming along, I'm a massive college baseball fan, like massive. I watch a lot of it. And if I'm Rob Manfred and the guys at the top of the chain, I'm trying to figure out a way. That's where people get attached to players, like you said. How do I get that to be more prominent in the landscape of college sports? And I mean, there's a good way to do it. I think if you get more gambling on the sport. I know, hey, I have my problems with how that works and how that's promoted, but that's an instant way to get people's eyes on it a little quicker because the quality of product in D1 college baseball and of course the top levels of D1 baseball is outstanding and it's great entertainment and it's coming.
I,
People are
I,
paying more attention than they used to, but the difference between football and basketball compared to baseball, it's still light years away.
Yeah, I know there's a huge difference in terms of nationality in college baseball, but the Canadian presence has grown dramatically over probably since the late 90s, Larry Walker era, sort of Larry Walker being the Vince Carter of baseball in Canada, just promoting the development. And here's what you can do if you do it the right way. But people aren't as aware, maybe, as they should be of the talent, the Canadian talent that is playing in U.S. Is there a way to show people in Ontario and Canada these kids before they get drafted?
Oh, no question. And I think that's the next major advancement in baseball. I think, making people aware, giving an opportunity to see these kids and where they're going to go and just how great the product is. It's like we spend how much time is spent, like you say, on football and college basketball. My God, it's a major. These are pro sports at this stage. Baseball, the level of the product is exactly the same. There's no difference. It's the same level, the same process, and the same age of kids. So yeah, I think there's a lot of great baseball being played under our noses right here in Canada. When you got the CPBL, which is our elite league for the young kids right now that before they go to school and things like that. But yeah, there's great college leagues around that in the US obviously at this point um, that showcase that product, and I think it behooves everybody to get that product more in front of people as soon as possible so they can see how excellent it is and how entertaining it is because uh, pro sports is becoming so much, it's not as attainable for people to go see. It's priced out of a lot of people's ranges, and it's harder for people to get to and see and view and consume other than as a TV show. So if you can give people a product in their backyards, I think there's a lot there that I think people will realize once they see it how great it is. So Canadian baseball is ready to blow, in my opinion.
I mentioned earlier the name Scott Boras, and Scott Boras is like, I don't think there's any comparison in baseball to the client list that he represents in Juan Soto, and it's always involves the Blue Jays on the periphery. And I know that Paul Beeston didn't have a great relationship with Scott Boras, but then when they signed Hyunjin
That's an
Ryu,
understatement.
when they signed Hyunjin Ryu, it changed that dynamic. And now that the Blue Jays have what is perceived as a large market profile in terms of the ability to spend money and bring in free agents, all of a sudden Scott Boras loves what the Blue Jays are. So I want your
100%.
opinion on like how much did and we'll talk about Juan Soto and we'll talk about Pete Alonso, and his client list goes on and on and on. But you've been to a lot of winter meetings where Scott Boras, he comes in and he has his press conference, and for some reason, every writer knows exactly when he's getting to the lobby.
That's
I don't know
right.
how that works.
By the Christmas tree outside. Be there 6 o'clock.
But let's talk about Juan Soto then. I mean, how does he bring so many fan bases into the belief that they too can have Juan Soto or a Juan Soto that is in his stable?
Well, I mean, that's that. I mean, Boris is a master PR guy, right? I mean, hey, the more people you get into the mix or believed to be into the mix, the you drive the price up, hopefully, and that's the whole point. I mean, that's a trick as old as the game, obviously. And he's the best at it, becoming a celebrity unto himself in doing this. And I mean, you're going to hear about. We're already hearing it in Toronto, right? About Soto's in the Blue Jay, or sorry, the Blue Jays are in on Soto. I'm hearing to think today about the Tampa Bay Rays. The absurdity of, you know what I mean?
Yeah, the Rays are involved, right? Can he fix a roof? That's the question. Um, the but even Alex Anthopoulos, and Alex is, when he was GM in Toronto, his big thing was that he would never comment on any free agent or any of his own players, because if he did, then you could interpret that, if he would talk about one and not another, then you could interpret it somehow. So he would never
Yeah,
talk, which
right.
meant Scott Boras was free to use the Blue Jays as a mystery team or someone that nobody's talking about. I remember Prince Fielder was a free agent, and they were talking about Prince Fielder and the Jays being heavily involved in that. And I think he ended up, that was the contract that he signed with the Texas
Yeah,
Rangers.
that's right.
But yeah, I mean, this guy is a marketing genius, as you point out. But the Soto thing, just because it's Scott Boras, and because who else has he got? He's got Pete Alonso. He's got a bunch of the free agent
Snell.
starting pitchers.
Yeah,
So he's got a lot of players. I think he's got 14 of the top free agent players.
right.
But as soon as Juan Soto said, and I don't agree, I think it was really classless of him to start talking about his own free agency. as they were as they were mourning the loss to the Dodgers, like still in uniform, and he's talking about, I'm going to the highest bidder, if all 30 teams are involved, which all of a sudden prompted a certain number of Toronto-based fans to say, "Hey, we're in on Soto."
Right.
But that is just the way that Scott Boras operates. I mean, when Jennifer Lopez broke up with A-Rod, I didn't call her and invite her to Applebee's. You got to know your lane. You got to stay in your lane.
You gotta know. Yeah, yeah.
She said
Where
she was wide open to.
yeah, that's right. I mean, why not? But yeah, probably not gonna get far, right? But you're in the you would have been in the conversation.
Oh yeah. But so like we'll dismiss any Juan Soto because I mean you have an observation about Rogers' ownership and comparing the Soto situation to Ohtani.
Well, hey, the only way it happens, and any sane person knows, is if they get an exception to the budget. Rogers is a very corporate entity, as we all know. They set their budget. It is what it is. You negotiate that as they are probably right now. Mark's done a great job of getting in a lot more money than they've had previously. But once it's set, that's the end of it. There's no going back. There's no negotiating. There's no trade deadline adjustments. None. So if they don't get an exception for Soto, it's not possible. Now, why would they get an exception for Soto? We've discussed this before, but I just don't see the comparables as you've noted with Ohtani. They're just completely different situations, and the business case for Soto, in my opinion, wouldn't be there. Um, hey, if they get one, the hat comes off tipped all day, but I just don't see the scenario where he could possibly be in play. I don't know. I'm sure I know you agree with me, but
Yeah, the difference to me is, and you pointed it out, and I'll just define it in the way I see it, is that the Ohtani salary, the Ohtani contract would have been on a separate budget. It wouldn't have been
and it
on the Blue
was.
Jays payroll budget. It would have
It
been
was.
on business, Rogers'
Yep.
business, because by now, and we see it with the Dodgers have paid huge amounts of that contract, which is really, what was it, 700
Yeah.
million?
Yeah.
So the Dodgers, it's paying
Sort
for
of.
itself. And Rogers already had analysis of what he would mean, what his presence would mean to their business. It had nothing to do with baseball.
No.
And in terms of Soto as a comparison, even if the Jays were, their package was 6 to 650 for Ohtani, they cannot justify that for Juan Soto eating up as much as it would of their baseball payroll, because this would not be considered by Rogers as an Ohtani type contract. It would be a baseball contract.
The money's just not
And you
there. It's
cannot,
just
yeah,
not there.
you cannot win with that much of your payroll being eaten up by one player. And
Right.
unless you have that business deal set aside,
Right. That's right.
which was the Ohtani thing.
And there's just logically not one to be made. You know what I mean? Like there's just not one to be made. So, who knows? But I mean, let's say it's a 2% chance. I'll put it that.
I would say less than that, but like Ohtani, or sorry, Soto, there's plenty of players, and we've talked about it in the past. Everybody's talking about it now. There's a priority list of players that the Blue Jays need to sign or acquire and trade that can fill some holes and create a rapid rebuild, is what they're aiming for, from 74 wins. If you go 74 wins to 88 to 90, I think that would for them be a successful year, because
Yes.
they're not talking about winning the division. They're talking about getting onto the dance floor in October. And this
The goalposts have moved, have they?
well, yeah.
In
Yeah,
9 years? But yes, that's exactly. I think that's the best you can hope for at this stage, to be relevant in the playoff conversation, right?
right. And there's plenty of free agents out there and players that are pricing themselves out of small markets that are approaching free agency, probably into their second or third year. of arbitration. But what to you, Mal, is the priority list of what holes they need to fill? And I've told you that John Schneider, I asked him how many games the bullpen had cost him last year, and he thought about it, went on to a different topic, and then came back to it and said, "So you're asking me how many games we lost because of the bullpen?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I'd say about 10." So about 10 from 74. Plus, they gave away the final weekend to the Marlins when they were already at 74 wins. Rah, rah, rah. But,
Yeah. Right, right.
but
No,
so
he's
you add
guessing, but
10,
obviously,
you
yeah.
add 10, and then you add positions of need, and which you're going to give us right now, the priority that you feel they need to fill.
Well, and that's the problem. There's a lot of holes to fill. I mean, there are a lot of holes to fill. You know what I mean? So, you need the low-hanging fruit of power. Obviously, that's the most important thing. You know what I mean? To me, you've got your corner outfielders. You know, obviously you've got holes at second base and third base. Um, the bullpen is an obvious thing, but to me, if you want to be relevant quickly with the biggest bang for your buck, and the amount of money they have to spend is kind of limited. We've talked about that. It's not like they've got this, massive amount of money just to start dropping on free agents. I think to get the biggest impact, and I think you may disagree with me a little bit, you need a power corner bat. I think we both agree on that, obviously. And there are opportunities to get that. Whether, you can get that at third base, you can get that in the outfield, whatever. I think you go after a starting pitcher. I think that filters that has the biggest impact. It eats up the most innings. And then clearly you got to build a bullpen. But I think you try to do that without spending a lot on it. And you try to go grab some guys that maybe aren't at the top of the heap in that respect, the Tanner Scotts and things like that. But if you can go get an innings eating rotation guy, I think that filters out, and I think that's your quickest path to add wins quickly. I think you can do the bullpen cheaply, and I think you don't have a choice because if you spend a lot of money on the bullpen, those other holes you can't overcome. You don't, in my opinion, I don't think you need a second closer if you don't get the power bat. Like there's no games to close. You know what I mean? That's just you probably disagree with me, but I think that's the two moves you need to make. If I'm them trying to become relevant really quick.
So would you agree that Anthony Santander is probably priority number one if you're not going to go after Soto?
I think so because I think he's a guy you could probably realistically get, and I'm not sure. I don't think you're getting Pete Alonso, and I don't. And again, the last thing you want to do is put Vladdy at third. No way can he play third base. That's just the wrong thing to do. And yeah, I think Santander out in the outfield. I think that's it. It's a good fit, I would say. You know what I mean? He's hit a ton
The
of homers. No, I mean what and
MLB,
he's not. I don't think you got to give him the bag, so to speak.
yeah, MLB trade rumors suggest 5 years at 100 million, which is 20 million a year. But I don't think that's realistic because he was offered qualifying offer, which is
Yeah.
21.05. Like, are you going to take less over 5 years per average annual value than you would taking the 1 year deal? I think it would have to be more than that, but it's something they can afford. It's something they can think about. What do you think about repatriating Teoscar or Jurickson Profar from
I have little interest in Profar unless you're adding it, you know, and you've taken care of other things. I just don't think Teoscar is an option at this point. I think that ship's probably sailed. It'd be great. I mean, that's the type of player he'd cost less than Santander. Uh,
yeah.
sure. I mean, if you could pull it off, that's massive power. And I mean, we've seen it, we know it, and it's exactly what they need. It's just, I mean, it should never have left, unfortunately.
Profar to me has no like outstanding tool. He's got good tools and he had a breakout year this year. But to me, you need someone who's like a bopper, like you're talking about, like we're
What
talking about
about
with Santander.
what about Bregman? I get it. There's signs of decline there, but
I think the
that
Matt Chapman I would
And
call it a failure.
it's
Um,
remind you of that. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah. So I think that that sort of throws a damper on any Alex Bregman
Well, but here's
talk.
what I'm going to say. This management team's not going to have to worry about years 3, 4, and 5, so to speak. And I think you can get a couple of, if you're, if you're blowing it all out to compete next year, I'm pretty confident you're going to get a year or two of pretty good quality out of Bregman, and he instantly fits that lineup, and you're relevant on, you take care of that hole. Like the contract as a whole, it's going to be George Springer, right? It's going to be one of those deals where you're like, it's probably not looking good. But if you're not concerned about that, so to speak, I think that could be an option for him if you're going to go that route.
I
You know,
th I saw a clue, and you really have to go with clues when you're listening to Ross Atkins in an interview. And he was asked about, and I don't know why he doesn't say that we're actively trying to sign Vlad Guerrero Jr. I don't know why he doesn't go down that route. The fans want to hear it. Vlad hopefully knows that's true. And free agents on the outside would look more kindly on this franchise if they knew they were trying to sign Vlad.
well, the reason you don't say it, Rich, in my opinion, is because you probably know at this stage you haven't been able to sign him. So if you say you are 100% committed to it and you can't get it done, you lose the option of saying, well, we decided to move on because of X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? If you state it right out front, they've been trying to sign Vladdy for a long time. Let's just be honest. And here we are in his free agent year. And the likelihood of Vladdy signing now without
Well,
A, he's going to wait to see what Soto gets,
well,
and
I don't
B,
think
not
there's
going
a.
to
I
free
think there's a
agency.
comp between him and Soto. I don't think there's a comp between him and Otani or him and Soto. Those are separate.
No, but
Like,
they set the Soto's gonna. I think there's more of a comp with Soto as far. I mean, he's not Soto, but I mean nobody is. But he's Vlad Guerrero, so you
yeah,
want to see what it is. You
yeah.
want to see, and you don't, you don't,
I would
you don't
see.
get this close to free agency without finding out, Rich. You just don't. You know
I would
what I
see.
mean?
I would see more of a comp with Freddie Freeman and Matt
Yep,
Olson and other first basemen and
sure.
looking at those numbers, you could put Vlad right near the top of that list, and it's way less than Soto will be getting. And it's so I think there's comps that you can use to sign him in advance of Scott Boras reaching an agreement with either the Mets or the Yankees on Soto. I don't think you
Sure,
have to wait that long.
sure.
And I
But
think
yet
it's
here we are.
important. I think it's important not just to the fan base, but I mean, clearly, we've heard rumors that they're having trouble selling season tickets and trying to put incentives. We won't go down that road, but because
That involves some events in November.
there's so many rumors out there where we
Yeah.
don't want to go down that road.
No,
But
no, no. Fair
but
enough.
like really, their PR is so bad right now. Their perception among fans, they need
Right.
to do something. They need to do something to turn it around and to start selling for
Well,
their state of the art pleasure palace that they have built. And now nobody's knocking on the door to come
Well,
in.
there's only one thing to do, Rich, is start signing players and make the team better. And so
But
we
I'm
can
saying that signing Vlad would help you signing other.
absolutely. That would be step number one if you can get it done. I cannot argue that. It's the old if you can get it done thing. So 100% that would be move number one. So get on it. And they've been on it. But like step one, agreed. Sign Vlad. That would change a lot of perceptions.
You think that's why, because Vlad chose third base when he was still a minor leaguer, they said, "What's your favorite position?" And he said third base. Do you think that's why Ross is dropping the possibility of him playing more third base next year just to keep Vlad interested, or somehow to send a message to Vlad that that door is not closed? Or do you think that's stretching?
100. No, I think it's exactly the reason. There's just no reason to play him there. I mean, can you play him there once or twice a week if it, whatever, of course. But can he play there full time? He cannot. We've seen it. It's already happened. We've seen that. And that's not going to go. The pitchers won't be happy. That's for sure. But yes, I
So
think that's exactly. And hey, if that helps, knock yourself out. You know what I mean? But you're not going to live with that long term. But
So
you got to get them.
you would say Christian Walker and Paul Goldschmidt are out.
I would say they are out.
Yeah,
I think that those are contracts you would really regret, and you might regret them next year.
yeah.
Like that's what I say. The Bregman one, you're probably going to sign a bad contract at the end, but you're going to get that value for a year or two. I'm not sure you're getting it with those guys. That's unless you get a real bargain basement, deal. And but I you wouldn't. That's not. It's too risky. Too
So
risky.
let's get back to the priority list of what the
Okay.
Jays need to do. And we disagree in terms of the bullpen, but I've always thought that teams wait until the almost the start of spring training, and then they start looking for power arms. They start looking for what's left over on the free agent market. And there's some definite deals available, but deals for fifth, sixth, seventh inning guys.
Right.
To me, the Jays need to find another, call it a co-closer with Jordan Romano. We're not even sure Jordan Romano's
Yeah.
effectiveness coming back from injury. But
Correct.
they need to go out early. This is just my opinion on it. They need to go out early in the offseason, say by the winter meetings, and come up with a co-closer, somebody who has been in that role in the past, has been effective in that role. My logic is that if you are going to contend, if you're going to win 88 to 90 games like the Jays are hoping they can do, if you're going to do that, you're going to have 3, maybe 4 stretches of 10 games where you're competitive, where you're either going to win 10 in a row, win 7 out of 10, be in every game. And you can't do it the way that pitching is constructed now, especially in the bullpen. You cannot do that with one closer, one setup man. They had Romano, they had Jimmy Garcia, and Chad Green wasn't yet there.
Well, Swanson too, when he was going well.
Swan.
Yeah,
I'm talking at the beginning of last year,
right.
and they couldn't do it. You need 2 sets of effective relievers. If you have a guy pitching 2 days in a row like Romano,
Hey, he's
that's
down.
being set up, then you need somebody for games 3 and 4 if you're planning on competing.
Right.
Otherwise, you're sending guys like Ryan Burr and Tommy Nance out there hoping they can do the job. Like, you can't hope. If the Blue Jays send 4, 5 relievers out there, you know that 2 of them are not going to pitch well.
Right.
So how are you going to, you need pitchers that can pitch effectively in 5 of every 6 games that they make an appearance.
And I agree with you. My thing is obviously I think the big money goes to those other issues, but do you need to attack it early? Yeah. Maybe you can get somebody you're a little more confident in, more reliable, and maybe you could do something like add an extra year on and get for a little less if you lock them up right away. And
Well,
I agree.
you look at, they just picked up Michael Peterson, who, I mean,
Right.
they had so many wire guys, it could have been nominations for the Emmys in the late 90s. But they had so many guys streaming the wire that these guys are interchangeable and not going to help. Like there's other organizations who give up on those guys. So this guy, Michael Peterson, that they just picked up, he throws 97 to 100,
Yep.
which is an arm you're looking for.
Yep.
He was on Team Great Britain. He was born in Middlesex, England, which Donald Trump would say pick a lane.
That's right.
But
Oh my God.
so he's for Team Great Britain in 2 World Baseball Classics, and
Right.
throws 97 to 100. So you just need a guy like that. You need another couple of guys like that, but you need 2 frontline guys, and I'm talking guys like Tanner Scott. If you have a righty-lefty combination, 4 years, the MLB trade rumors is saying 4 years, 60 million, and you're talking, well, you need to fill those other holes. I think at $15 million a year for a co-closer, and if Romano is getting $8 million in ARB, so
Well, but
Bullpen
to me,
the
that might be a
bullpen
little
is
too
easier to
rich.
fill. And if you
Uh,
wait too long, you lose those guys.
For sure. So, like the guy I'm looking at, and maybe it's a notch down, and maybe not. Is like a guy like Jeff Hoffman, who, ironically, was a Blue Jays first round draft pick, back in the day. Um, um, he's finally looking like he's figured it out a little bit these last couple of years, and you could probably get him for, well, not probably, you're going to get him for less than what you're going to pay for a Tanner Scott. And that's the type of thing I think, and I agree with you. If you go out and try to make a deal right off the hop, go get him, guarantee him, maybe you throw him an extra year to get
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. I
And,
mean, a
you know,
lot of times the Jays have to do that. So that's part of the
well, I
due
mean, that's
diligence,
free
you know?
agency too.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how that works, not just the Jays, everybody. Rather than waiting to see how the market falls and you lose those guys, and then you're back to the Michael Petersons, where you're basically a lot of teams, like you said, the longer you wait, you're throwing stuff at the wall, going, well, if I sign seven guys, maybe I'll get three
Yeah.
that
Well,
can,
that was their
yeah.
modus operandi in August and September is just keep picking guys off the waiver wire. That's all.
Right, that got big arms or do
Yeah.
something, and
Spin rate.
that's the guy I'm looking at. And we talked about Clay Holmes, do something, yeah, Clay Holmes, those type of things where they've done it before. Um, you kind of know what you're getting,
Yeah.
and then you
So
can fill in from there.
yeah, so I got a list here, and
Okay,
then the amount that MLB trade rumors said they might be
looking
earning,
for.
and like you said, you could add a year if you're the Jays and need to make that deal. Jeff Hoffman, 2 for 26. Clay Holmes, 2 for 26. I mean, it's a different kettle of fish being a Yankee closer, and he was for a couple of years. Then he fell off, but he
Right.
still had the stuff. And he as a setup guy. So he
Mhm.
comes to Toronto. The fans love him. He has some success being a co-closer or if there's injuries, he is that guy. So
Yep.
I would take a chance on Clay Holmes not being done. He's 30 years old. Carlos Estevez, not so much.
No, not
Um, we got Andrew Kitteridge would be a middle guy who's a middle relief guy, not a back end guy. Jose Leclerc.
right.
I mean,
Who's
he
done
he
it before,
closed, yeah.
right?
And he's younger than I thought. I think he's only 30.
And what do they
He was
project?
96, 97.
What do they project for
They
him?
don't even project. He wasn't even on their top 50 list,
Right. So,
but he is a free agent and available. So, I mean, there's guys out there who have the experience. And I think when you put all your eggs in we're going to invite all these guys who throw 97 to spring training. I think the problem there is command, experience, and
well,
and
there's
like
an issue, obviously. You know
squeezing
what I
the
mean?
ball a little harder in big situations and not having the same stuff as you show in a bullpen in February.
There's only so much Pete Walker can do with these guys. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
right.
Holy
I think
smokes.
he's
I mean,
reaching that
yeah,
he's
I
reaching
think
that limit of his
you might be
capability.
getting tired of this. You know what I mean? And like you
Yeah.
said, you go sign two guys you feel comfortable with, and try to conserve a little bit of money for those bigger issues, and then you can sign those guys with the idea that you don't need four of them, you need two of them. You know what I mean? It just gives you that little bit of depth
And
where you can
and
throw more stuff at the wall.
and then the last item that I have on my list of what it's easy for us to say a to-do list, but it's not for us to do, it's for them to do. The last item I got is, and you
Which
mentioned
therein lies the problem.
it. Yeah, we should be, except, yeah, we can't even open a computer, much less to
Well, we're not allowed in the building either at this point. So
um, add one starter.
that to me
I
is very
think that,
big.
like,
That's
they always go into the month of September and down the stretch and go, oh, we're going to try and give our guys an extra day of rest. Well, if you have another starter, even if they don't trade, even if they have the same cast of characters coming back, we mentioned it off air that what's wrong with returning to the days of a swing guy? Like Wyrod would be a perfect swing guy because he pitches three no hit, three perfect innings, and then sort of runs out
yeah,
of gas,
great.
whatever. But you could say, well, he took a year off pitching in games and he signed with the Jays. So last year was him regaining his sea legs, C for Cuba. But 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 the fact is that if he could start just say 9, 10, 12 games for the year and be available for long relief if somebody needs help in the third inning or fourth inning, and he could give you 3 innings. That's what probably his optimum role would be at this point of his career.
And you want to maximize those innings. Like you need more innings out of good arms like that, right? And so I agree with you. You move like you mentioned, go to a six-man rotation, and he's your swing guy. You don't need him all the time, and then he's available to you in more critical moments, and you get more innings out of him.
I got a couple of names here. How about in the final year of his contract before free agency, pitching in mile high conditions? Nobody wants to be there. Cal Quantrill, $9 million, final year of his contract. Repatriate him here. Maybe Paul would want to be the bullpen coach. They need a bullpen coach. So
You
his
could do
dad,
worse. You could do
yeah,
worse. Let
for
me tell
sure.
you. I think that is a tremendous idea. Those are the sneaky moves good teams make. That kid knows how to pitch. Is he your 97, 100? No, he isn't. He knows how to pitch. He's done it previously. Um, you know, he had that tough year at the end in Cleveland, obviously, which means you go to Colorado. I'm going to tell you, he pitched pretty darn well in Colorado, and
Yeah.
I mean that's saying something. If in for $9 million, I mean today's game that's free. Now,
And
what do you
do
package?
you not believe that the Colorado Rockies would be interested in a couple of the position players that the Jays showed last year? How
I
about
was just going to
Addison
say,
Barger? Addison Barger would, with the
yeah,
ability
all of
to,
them.
yeah,
All of them. If you
yeah.
you got
So
Barger, Schneider, Wagner, and Horowitz, they might be all stars in Colorado. Seriously, like
uh,
that
sounds
is
like
so.
Buffalo law firm.
That's right. It has been for sure. They'd have to be interested in one of those guys. Now, I mean,
And
go
9 million is
after
a lot for that franchise to be paying to a fourth starter.
to a fourth starter, and right, and $9 million, honestly, is a great value if you can get him. I think that's such a great idea. I'd be making lots of calls over there and really pushing that and see because I mean, maybe you throw him Wagner and a middling prospect or something.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, it's
and
not
then and
really,
then $9 million, you're not
yeah,
getting that on the free agent market.
right.
To me, that solves that
And,
starting rotation problem.
and you would have a chance to negotiate beyond 1 year while Cal was here pitching for this team. You would have a
Right.
chance because Bassett will be gone after next year, and then there'll be guys contracts expiring, and it may allow you to make a trade with one of the guys that's here right now and have Quantrill fill in as a number four or number three guy, somewhere in there.
He's the
But
type of guy that would have a massive impact in my or potentially and really give you an opportunity to compete and save some money where you can go out and use it on a power bat and maybe a better bullpen arm. You know,
yeah. And I covered him. I covered him when he was with the junior national team. And they played the Blue Jays at Dunedin Stadium, whatever it was called there, the car rental place. I don't know what it was called, but they played and he pitched. And you go in the clubhouse and you're talking to him, and it's like talking to a man. He was 17 at the time,
yeah.
and
He
and he was already mature because of the background of his dad, who never used ice. I admired that about Paul Quantrill. He said, "Screw the ice. I don't need it. My arm's not swollen. All
Coors
I do is
Light,
throw a
Coors Light,
fastball."
Coors Light works. Wonderful. Um,
But I digress there. But this
He,
kid was
my
already
son
mature
played
at
with him back
17
in
years old.
that's TPPL days. There's a team called the Terriers, one of those elite teams, and they were in the same organization. And 100%, he's wise beyond his years. And if you go find there's YouTube videos out there of him being interviewed. You will be blown away about how much of a student he is of the pitching and how well spoken he is. He's a guy. He's just a smart pitcher. I mean, just he's a smart pitcher. You'd be wise to get him in there, no question. if I'm Ross, I'm on the phone trying to make things happen that way rather than, see what's left, so to
The,
speak.
the other guy that I would take or I wouldn't take a gamble on, but I know that they were interested in 2019 before his last free agent contract is Kyle Gibson. I sat in the Scottsdale Resort lobby at the GM meetings prior to the agent going up to talk to Ross and Mark about Kyle Gibson. And I looked at his numbers this year. He's a free agent. He's not going to be asking for length like he was in
What year was that?
2019.
Yeah. It's
So,
2024 though.
yeah, well, his number, that's why I looked at his
No,
20.
for sure, for sure.
And they were, I would sign him short term. I would take a chance. And they're interested because they were back then, and his numbers are very similar. All he is a professional pitcher. He doesn't have gaudy strikeout numbers, but he keeps the ball in play. He's got command, and he's short term. And if you're looking to add someone to the rotation to extend it and give guys more opportunity to have 5 days between starts instead of 4 days between starts, which I think that they are looking to do, they haven't announced it, but you just look at, and we talked about it off air again. You look at the Dodgers, and they got two Japanese pitchers who are used to pitching once a week.
Right.
When Otani comes back and Yamamoto. So if you got two guys who say they don't pitch every 7 days, say they pitch every 6 days, then what do you do with the other three guys in your rotation? You have to keep them on the same schedule.
Right.
You're not making
Yeah, it's
Otani
too difficult.
adjust to Michael Grove or whatever his name is, you're doing the other way around. So I think that the game is headed for a modified 6-man rotation. And if the Jays are at the forefront of it, although they haven't been at the forefront of too much in the last few years, but
Talking.
yeah. But
How,
those are,
in the same vein, for those exact same reasons that you mentioned Kyle Gibson, and I know this isn't more expensive, but what about Frankie Montez? Guy eats innings and that type of guy. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Come in there and just chew innings. I think that's so undervalued in today's game. Innings, innings, innings. And I think that filters up to the rest of your pitching staff.
yeah.
That's
And
kind of the
there's
guy
a
I
guy that
thought.
there's a guy that's undervalued. He doesn't have the profile that a lot of those other guys do. And so you might be able to like sneak in and just yank him out of that list
Right.
for a
That's what I'm
reasonable amount
thinking.
of money. Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. I just think innings are undervalued in an era where we're looking at 97 to 100 all the time. And the reason we got to go to 6-man rotation is because,
Yeah.
it's like you go back in the day and you look at a guy like R.A. Dickey. And I know there's, a lot, you didn't get the Dickey that was with the Mets, but I don't think people realize how valuable he was to that.
Yeah. No,
Never
I
missed
agree
a
with that.
start,
Yeah.
6 innings every night,
He was
8 innings.
quirky. He was eccentric. He was quirky, but he gave
Oh,
you 200 plus
and he
innings
gave you
and
200 innings, man.
33 starts.
You don't win. They do not win without R.A. Dickey. They
Yeah.
just do not win. And you could pencil it in like clockwork. And it was just, it's like,
Thank God for Grant Balfour, who pulled him out of the raging Mississippi River as he
yeah,
was trying to swim across in his underwear.
well, he had a book to write, buddy. So, no question about it. We all win for it. No question.
Yeah.
Um, but like you don't get 200 innings if they're not decent enough. They don't
Yeah.
let you do it.
No, for
So,
sure.
so
Yeah.
it's the thing you need in this game
And
is
and the thing about people being surprised when the Jays said that they were more interested, or when Ross said at the GM meetings are more interested in a starting pitcher than relievers right now, is that even if you've got a healthy threesome that takes the ball every 5 days, you've got
yeah.
Barrios, Gosman,
Yeah,
and
like they've
Bassett.
done 2 years ago.
And
Yeah.
then you've got Bowden Francis that people are, he was great, but is he that good? Is he that
Right.
reliable? Can he
Right.
stay healthy? And then you got a fifth guy, who's we're saying would be better off as a swing guy. But even that number of starting pitchers isn't going to be
Not
enough over the course of
not gonna get it done.
162 games. You
This
need, like, the average for the Blue Jays in terms of starters, and we're not talking even about the openers like Trevor Richards was. We're talking about real starting pitchers is about 10 to 12 per year.
Yeah,
You're going to
it's
need that many.
generally 10. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. That's right. Like, and
I
they
think
don't have 10, and
yeah,
they've
I think the
been
Dodgers
lucky.
used 17 this year.
The Blue Jays have been lucky with the
Yeah.
health of their
Yeah.
rotation, and guys
Well,
are
I
getting
mean, to their
older.
credit, they signed guys that they knew were reliable and mostly
Sure,
healthy.
Barrios
So,
for
I mean,
sure.
there's more than luck involved in that. There's some research and whatever.
Yeah, I
But
don't mean entirely lucky, but
yeah,
you are fortunate if your rotation stays together, like
yeah.
in today's game, for sure. I'll give you that, for sure.
We got one more thing here, and then we'll go to NFL picks.
All right.
Um, Dave Roberts go and we mentioned it. We might have mentioned it last week with Gibby. Dave Roberts goes to the mound, lays his hands on Blake Trinan, and has faith to keep him in the game. He wouldn't have done that, and then he turns and goes back to the dugout. Trinan gets the out. They bring in closers and finishers, and they win the game. They win the World Series. But I don't think Dave Roberts would have done that 5 years ago. So my question to you is, does John Schneider have a chance to develop into a self-confident enough manager to do that in a big moment? First, they got to get to a big moment, but in a big moment in a big game, does he have a chance to reach that point of self-confidence with and look up in the executive box and go, screw you?
Yeah, I only John can answer that question. I think John is an excellent baseball man. And I think he has everything you need in a manager. I think he just had like, but that's a fair question to ask because he obviously didn't feel he had the leverage to do that, and he didn't. Let's face it.
Yeah,
He did what he was told, and the plan was already set. And you lose a clubhouse when you do that, Griff. You know that. You had one. You got one to give that first playoff with Gosman. You didn't get it the second time with Barrios, and my guess is he lost the clubhouse there. And I think that, and you were in that more than I wasn't, but that's just my perception of how that would go, knowing having been in there. But can he do it? Absolutely, he can. I think John has a presence about him, and he's a great baseball man. He knows what he's doing. He has to, as he goes along. Look at Roberts. You develop a little more leverage, and you feel stronger about your convictions as you go along in this game. Will he get that opportunity is the question, and I fear that he won't. I fear he's not Dave Roberts. They're not on the same level, nor most importantly for John, nor are they in the same organization. I mean, John's downfall is going to be he's the manager of the Toronto Blue Jays, unfortunately, and say what you want. That organization is not in the best of spaces right now. And I think Dave Roberts probably developed enough of, reputation within that organization and had enough opportunities that
yeah.
John isn't getting with the
So
roster. So yeah, there's no reason John couldn't be in that position.
yeah,
And if it's not here, I hope it's somewhere else because he's a great baseball guy, man. He just is. And anybody who knows John wouldn't say otherwise. They just wouldn't.
yeah. I agree with you on that. And they haven't taken one of our top five moves that they should make this offseason, but it's early.
It's early. We've heard
Yeah,
that term before.
I mean, they haven't announced that they're looking at 88 to 90 wins, but realistically, that'll probably get you into the wild card.
Well, and Marks inferred that's where they're going. They're trying
Yeah.
to get back to that position of
Yeah.
competing for a playoff spot.
And,
So it's
and
going to
then
be 90 wins.
if the candid assessment by John Schneider that his bullpen cost him 10 games could be fixed, then if they make those other moves that we're suggesting yeah, they could do it. And do you trust this ownership or this management group to be the ones to pull off all those moves? I'm not so
Well,
sure.
and that's the major
Yeah,
question, and the evidence would say no.
yeah,
But unfortunately, that's where they're at, and it's going to be entertaining to watch. Let's say that. Well, it's very interesting off. This is one of the most interesting off seasons I
Yeah.
can recall in a
Oh, for
long
sure.
time because they put
And
themselves in a spot
the
that they've got
pressure,
to get out this year.
right?
This year.
The pressure, if they hadn't built this pleasure palace, I don't think they would have had the pressure to fill it that they do right now. So fans should be happy that they spent all that money on building the stadium on a new club that's going to open down the right field line next year, next opening day. I think that fans should be happy that it puts the pressure on this front office to win because
If they hadn't
they
built the
needed
pleasure,
something.
if they hadn't built the pleasure palace, they're not here.
Yeah.
Like they're not here anymore. So
Yeah,
it
I never
goes
thought
both
of it that
ways.
way.
I
Yeah.
mean, but correct. There is no question. In fact, nobody's denying it, not even the management team, that this year has to be a success. Like they know they have to get back there this year for so many reasons. So the pressure's on, which makes it interesting. It
Yeah.
makes it exciting, and there's going to be a lot to talk about. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And we will continue this discussion next week. But for now, let's wrap up with the NFL portion of our podcast, which
Yeah.
you're 3-6
Yeah,
through
yeah,
three. We give three winners, three sure winners, and you've
yeah.
had one per week.
Yeah.
3-6.
I'm
I'm
definitely
5-4. So
I'm
let's go.
definitely leaning on the sample size excuse at this point. So
So you give one and I'll come back with one. So who do you like?
I like the game tonight. I like the Cincinnati Bengals getting 6 points at Baltimore. I think they've shown signs of getting back to where they were. Obviously, Baltimore's a good team, but I think Cincinnati's going to put up a bunch of points tonight and keep this thing, hopefully within the six. So I expect to see them move the ball, score points. So that's my number one.
My number one is the Broncos plus 7.5 at Kansas City. I know Kansas City undefeated. It hasn't always been easy for them. This is a look ahead game. They got Buffalo next week. So they've got Denver at home. Pat Mahomes was struggling with his legs, something to do with his legs. So they're not going to force him to do a lot of running. If they get a lead, they may just put Wentz in there. But I like I'm a believer in looking at teams looking ahead, looking past their opponent, and I think that the Broncos plus 7.5 is a good call.
Well, and it's a division game too, right? So that 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 always, well, sometimes those things can be a good battle.
Yeah.
My second game is the Commanders, -2.5, facing the Pittsburgh Steelers at home. I like it because it's less than three. I know everybody's fallen back in love with Russell Wilson.
Oh,
I do not think he's an overly good quarterback at this. He's throwing moon balls, and it's worked for 2 weeks. And I just think Washington can kind of grind them into a pulp here, and just, I think it's going to be a close game, but they're playing great football. So, and
well, they
JD
got they
Daniels is.
got they just traded for Lattimore, I think,
Yeah, they
all pro
did.
defensive back. So Russell's got enough problems without throwing against an all pro. So we'll see.
Yeah,
I
hey,
agree with you on that one. That's a
they
good
got
one.
it. They got away with it for a couple of weeks. I think
Yeah.
the tide's about to turn in Pittsburgh.
I like my second one is the Chargers minus 7.5 against the Titans at home.
Nice.
Um, Judge Herbert is not getting the love he should. Justin Herbert is not getting the love he should. He's finding receivers that he didn't know he had because they were trying to make adjustments from losing their wide
Yeah,
receiver core,
I agree.
and their running game is really good. The defense is sturdy, and the Titans are the Titans, and they don't have Derrick
And
Henry. They don't have a lot of weapons.
it's hard to
I don't
argue
even
what
know offense.
coaching can do too. The Chargers clearly are in a better
Yeah,
space with Harbaugh than they've ever
yeah, for
been,
sure.
right? So my
Your
last
final
one,
one?
last one is going to be the Arizona Cardinals getting one at home against the New York Jets. Um, there is just zero evidence to suggest the Jets are competent. I mean, they, you know, if when they win, they There feels like they're barely doing it, and they've been bad more than they've been good. The Cardinals, the defense that was supposed to be the absolute worst in the league, is playing excellent football. They are attacking and attacking without probably great talent. And
Yeah.
Kyler Murray is just, he probably might be, for whatever it is, he might be the best player in the field, obviously,
Yeah.
and he's electric and he makes mistakes, but I find the Jets just don't give you any confidence that they can win a game. That's,
And
on the
fa-
road, especially like that.
I
So,
agree. And fans should realize that a line that's being set is not a line to say who the odds makers believe is going to win the game. It's how the line is set so they can get 50% of the bets on each side. And New York fans love to give their money away on the Jets. And like, so they're not saying it's going to be that close a game, but they're saying that Jets fans believe it's going to be that close of a game, and we can take their money and take Cardinal money. And
hope I'm on the sharp side
yeah,
there, Rich.
yeah,
That's
for
why
sure.
I've
My
taken the
last
point.
game, my last game, and I think it might be the third week I've chosen the New England Patriots. They're getting 6 points at Chicago. I don't think Chicago has gotten over that their clown defensive back
Right.
railing at the crowd while the Hail Mary is taking place, and then rushing over and deflecting the Hail Mary into the receiver's hands for the winning
I
score.
feel like that's something you would have done
I
back
don't
in the day as a youngster.
I don't think they've gotten over that. And I think the coach, you talked earlier in a baseball sense of a manager losing the room. I think the coach may have lost the room by not responding to his own team, other than who knows what he said inside the locker room. But I just think that the Bears are reeling at this point. They've got Drake May against the guy who was drafted first overall. So he may have an extra incentive there, and 6 points. The Bears giving 6 points to
Well,
anybody at this time.
like you say, Eberflus doesn't exactly instill confidence when he's speaking publicly. I can imagine what the message is internally, right? So that's always been the question. So
Absolutely.
I
And
don't disagree. Those are beautiful picks, aren't they?
I think we'll be 6-0 if you
I
follow our lead in these
jump
things.
on board, boys.
Anyway, that wraps it up for Exit Philosophy. If you interested in seeing previous podcasts or conversations that I've had in the past with former Jay's former expos, or my columns from the last 2 years, you can go to griffsthepitch.com and everything's there. Feel free to drop a few bucks on me. I got some subscription, but to be honest, most of the stuff comes to you for free. Anyway, I
That's a
appreciate it.
good price.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Mal. And thanks everyone for listening. And we will talk to you next week.
Take care.